Mr. Carey has been selected as an outstanding first-year student advocate by the National Resource Center for the First-Year Experience and Students in Transition, as well as winning the David Eckert Award, which recognizes two long-standing employees for their hard work and commitment to the university. Throughout all his success, he is most proud of the relationships he's built with the community here at Widener. Please give a nice silent welcome to Mr. Tim Carey.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it, Greg. Thank you, Tim. Next up is from our softball program, Jessica Kazmarchek. She'll be introducing Allie Horvath. Go ahead, Jess.
So I'm introducing Allie Horvath. Allie grew up in Chalfont, Pennsylvania with both her parents and two younger brothers. Before starting her astounding career at Widener, Allie went to Central Bucks South High School where she played both varsity softball and volleyball. Allie came to Widener in 2014 to study biomedical engineering and to continue her softball career as a pitcher and outfielder. While at Widener, she had an amazing career and certainly made herself known. Allie was a member of the Biomedical Engineering Society and excelled in academics. When it came to the field, Allie was certainly a player and a leader. In 2015, she earned a place on the All-Middle-Atlantic Conference Commonwealth First Team, along with leading the team in batting average, hits, and stolen bases. In 2016, Allie made the NFCA All-East Region Second Team and was All-Middle-Atlantic Conference Commonwealth Honorable Mention. During 2016, she set single-season program records for hits and stolen bases. In 2017, she was named to the NFCA All-East Region Second Team, along with being ranked first in the MAC Commonwealth for stolen bases. After an astonishing career here at Widener, Allie currently works at Merck as an operations specialist manager. She was definitely a leader on the field, but she also was a leader in the workplace. She recently led her team of technicians to a successful manufacture of a vaccine called bulk HIB, which is used for PEDVAX and Vaxicils.
Thanks, Jess.
Awesome. Thank you, Jess. Next up from our cross-country track and field program, Maya Sens. Go ahead, Maya.
Before becoming part of the Pride, Dr. Allison Doherty worked nationally on the important issues of Title IX, equity, and campus crime with the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, the White House administration, and the United States Department of Justice. She has also received the Alumni Achievement Award for Social Change from the Catholic University of America, as well as the Academic All-American Award for Cross Country and Track. Widener University now has the honor of having Dr. Allison Doherty as our Associate Vice President of Human Resources, Title IX Coordinator, and Widener Care Team member. We now have the privilege of having Dr. Allison Doherty as our speaker on our panel.
Awesome. Thank you, Maya. Last up, but certainly not least, from our football program, Mario will be introducing Miguel Pena. Go ahead, Mario.
So as you said, last but certainly not least, I'll be introducing Mr. Miguel Pena, who is on the Board of Trustees here at Widener, and he was a student athlete during his time spent here who excelled in both football and track and field. But before all of his notable achievements at Widener, his story had to start somewhere. This would be in Queens, New York. However, he did grow up in northern New Jersey for most of his life. Mr. Pena attended Linden High School, located in Linden, New Jersey. Here he was a three-sport athlete in football, track, and baseball. When high school was coming to an end and it was almost time to make a college decision, Mr. Pena had many things he wanted to check off his list. Widener was one of the very few that accomplished this goal because it was one of the few schools that allowed him to play both the sports he loves. While attending Widener, Mr. Pena had many notable achievements. Some of these include earning his degrees in Bachelor of Science and Master of Business Administration. He won a MAC conference champion in the 400 meter, and also an NCAA track and field All-American in the 4x400 meter. Mr. Pena is still a member of the 4x400 relay record at the school. After graduating from Widener with his bachelor's and master's degree, he began working at 10X Technologies, which is a company that makes environmentally sustainable specialty chemicals for oil field application, and is now currently the vice president. Mr. Pena worked his way up the company by being a student of his craft, a team player, having discipline, a strong work ethic, and being a true professional in everyday tasks. He learned all of the aforementioned by being an athlete at Widener. Mr. Pena's role at being vice president has taught him many things about being a leader. Decision-making, managing and mentoring people, leading by example, and giving back are only a few of the roles he has learned throughout his time as being vice president. Mr. Pena shows what it means to be a true leader through his prideful ownership.
Awesome. Thank you, Mario. Appreciate it. So those are our 4 panelists. Obviously, we have an awesome panel for you, and we'll just get right into it. So our first question is from Ryan Steckline. He's a member of our football program at Widener. Go ahead, Ryan. Ask your question for the panel.
On the panel is a former collegiate athlete. So my question is, how did participating in college athletics shape your leadership skills in your respective organizations? Furthermore, did playing a team sport ultimately lead to the development of your leadership skills?
Go ahead, Tim. Why don't you start us out?
Okay, great. Thank you for the question, Ryan. I guess leadership development for me comes from watching others who I respect in regards to their leadership skills. When I was a student athlete at Widener, there was Bill Cupid was the head football coach. What I learned from Bill and watching Bill was very similar to what I learned as a young employee at Widener from Jim Harris, which was being in their presence made you feel special. They just had a way, okay? It was an embrace, knowing who you were, making you feel important. Then there was Bill Zwan, who was another coach that I played under. And Bill had a way of making you understand that to him, you were more important as a person than you were as a win, if you get what I mean. Any student athlete will get what I mean by that. Those 2 people helped me in watching how they interacted with people. I had Coach Dorman. Many of you student athletes don't know this, but when Miguel and I were students, we both had to take PE. Okay, we weren't given the opportunity to use our sport to overtake that, so we had to take PE. I had Coach Dorman as my beginner swimming instructor. Okay, and I knew how to swim. I took the class just thinking, oh my God, it's going to be an easy A for me. Just jump in the pool, pretend like I can't swim. A couple hours a week, I'll be doing the backstroke. Coach Dorman noticed that in a second, said, basically, I know you know how to swim, but I'm going to teach you a little bit extra. You're going to go above and beyond. So by the time I was a senior, I actually earned a job during the summer as a lifeguard because I learned skills from Coach Dorman that I never thought I would learn when I was in college. So here's somebody calling me on the carpet saying, hey, I know what you're doing. And by doing this, you're going to learn something a little bit different. So walk to the other end of the pool. He actually made me go in with jeans on and make a raft out of my pants. But from that, I learned how to swim so well that I became a lifeguard. So those are just a couple of examples. I know we have other panelists who will probably want to piggyback on this. So go ahead.
Miguel, I think you have to unmute your microphone really quick.
Sorry about that. All right, Ross, do you decide who's next or we just jump in?
Just go ahead, jump right in.
Okay, I'd love to go next because I think there's a lot of parallels to my answer with Tim's answer. So Tim, as he mentioned, he got to play for 2 really, really great football coaches. And I would tell you they're 2 very different styles of leadership between the 2 of them, between Cubit and Zwan. I mean, I would argue night and day. But both great leaders who I learned a ton from. And then I also had the honor and the pleasure, and I was fortunate enough to run track for Coach Tui, who's another great leader. Again, totally different style. So I feel super fortunate that I had the benefit of being an athlete, under 3 different coaches that were arguably all great leaders with different styles. I would tell you that the leadership skills that I was able to kind of learn or take away from all 3 of those coaches, I didn't even know I had until I later took on a leadership role in my organization. And that's when you start to think back of all the times where Coach Tui had a message for me, either personally or to the team, or, Coach Swan or Coach Cubit had something to say that just kind of resonated with you. And when you take on a leadership role within any organization, you start to think back at those little moments that, you know, at the time didn't really seem like they were a big deal, but you look back and you recognize how important that was in shaping my personal leadership skills and abilities today. So really the biggest ones are, you know, hard work, diligence, discipline. I mean, these are all things that athletics taught me that at the time I didn't realize were going to help me become a much better leader in my career going forward. You know, I remember vividly having a workout and then having to go to the gym afterwards. And, you know, that discipline that you have to teach yourself, like, you know what, you can't slip. You gotta stay on your game. You have to get in the weight room, even though we just had a long track workout, you know, and I remember going with the sprinters into the weight room right after track workout, I exhausted, could barely walk. But we knew that's what we needed to do to get to the next level. So I would say participating in college athletics had a paramount role in shaping my leadership skills today, for the reasons I just described and the ones Tim just mentioned.
Absolutely. Now, Allie, being our most recent college graduate, did playing softball under Coach Dorman, that ultimately lead to developing leadership skills?
Yeah, for sure. For me, I was a leader on both offense and defense. I was never like an official team captain, but especially in my senior year, I felt as though I had to be a leader on the team. For me, I was always extremely hard on myself, and it was really important to like kind of take a step back and realize that other people were watching. And that's kind of a big thing that I apply in the workplace as well. So not only that, but like working together as a team, that's huge for me. So having playing a team sport was able to I was able to take that into my workplace. And for me, I work in manufacturing, so we work across 3 shifts. And so teamwork is huge in an environment like that, where you have to realize that everybody's there working on the same goal. And there are people that, you know, are going to drag you down sometimes. And there's people that are there's shifts that are going to do better, and there's shifts that are going to struggle. So it's really important to kind of take a step back and help guide your team and like put them in the same position that everybody's kind of working on the same goal. And playing a college sport definitely helped me to see all of that.
Awesome. So we're actually going to move on to our next question. This question is going to be for Tim, but after Tim answers, Allison, let's have you follow it up. So the person asked our next question is Carter Landry. He's part of our men's lacrosse program. Go ahead, Carter.
Good afternoon, Tim.
Good afternoon.
You have 3 degrees from Widener. You have a unique perspective on what makes Widener University special. How has your extensive time within the Widener community shaped your overall approach to leadership?
Carter, thank you so much for the question. It's difficult and challenging to say that there was one aspect of it. I have to say, with Jim Harris and Julie Woolman, there were there's been about 5 presidents since I've been here, and some in the interim level. But since Jim took over and Julie's mindset, I would say a few of the things that come to mind are that they live the mission. Both presidents that I've worked under recently have goals in mind, and you feel a part of strategizing those goals. You feel a part of implementing those goals. I've seen a change in the institution over my 21 years here, 25 if you include my 4 years as a student. And during that time period, I believe in the direction of the university. I feel that we are doing things the right way. I think we are doing things in a manner that is ethically appropriate. I believe that the opportunities that we provide to our students across the board has enabled me to feel confident in the students that we're developing for the future. So having said that, again, I echo what I said the very first question, as I try and take certain things from the leaders that I've served under. And Jim Harris, I mentioned feeling special. Dr. Woolman, Katie Hershey, Jerry Blumker, Andy Workman, the people that I'm working under now. I try and take things that they do, all right? And I see that I respect and try and make it my own. Dr. Woolman is a professional through and through. She's very empathetic as well. So I get that feeling from her. And I want to be more empathetic to people. I want to be more empathetic to students. So I'm trying to steal that quality that she has and make it my own. So that's some of the areas I've seen change, I've seen growth, and I've seen a positive direction that the institution is headed in.
Yeah. Now, Allison, you've been involved with Green Dot and Title IX, so essentially exactly what the Widener community is proposing. So what do you say about this?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, and listen, thank you so much for having me on this panel. I feel special being the only non-Widener alum athlete, so I want to speak and equal to my peers in this. But, you know, one of the things about Green Dot, and I know the entire athletic community is quite frankly the only group on campus where every member of the teams and the coaches have been through the trainings. And really it's about, you know, most of my work has been in violence prevention. And I think being an athlete in high school and college has shaped my commitment to that work. And I think we've seen it kind of in professional athletics with professional athletes speaking up about it and the NCAA stepping up and taking a large role in prevention. So, you know, with Green Dot, it's just wonderful that, you know, I can certainly speak. It's my area of expertise, but people are going to get sick of hearing me speak about it. So the fact that we have Fred, Tim, Larissa, who's on here, people who have been trained who can actually speak to this. I know that, you know, our football coach is trained. So it's just great to have that leadership in athletics. I think when it comes to social issues, social problems, there's such a role for athletics to play in there, and for this to be a part of it is important. I think also one of the things I can liken my college experience to Widener is I was a Division III athlete, and I made that choice. I had, like some, and some of you I'm sure on here, had the choice to consider Division I and maybe be a smaller fish. And I chose Division III athletics. And the reason I chose it was I knew I didn't want to be, nor could I possibly be, an Olympic runner, but I wanted to do and experience other things. And it was incredibly challenging. I can't say that my schedule was that much lighter than friends who I had who I knew went Division I. So you all in your Division III experience are already doing the thing that many leaders do every day. You have to balance priorities and competing priorities in that. And so I think with Green Dot, for an example, having athletes step up and become a part of this on top of everything else they're doing just shows how much more of a commitment it is.
Absolutely. Let's move on to our next question, and we'll start with Miguel on this one. Brandon Reese from our baseball team has a question for the group. Go ahead, Brandon.
Hi, how are you? My question for you is how important is the idea of taking ownership when leading people within your respective organization?
Thanks. What was your name, Brandon?
Yes.
Hey, Brandon, thanks for the question. And great question. Extremely important. So I'm a big believer in accountability. You know, I think one of the things that helped me become successful in my career is, you know, I was my first job right out of Widener was working for a pretty passionate leader. And he's the guy that, quite frankly, I still work for today. His name's Mike O'Neill. And, you know, one of the things that was, looking back in hindsight, is probably the most impressive thing about his leadership style is his ability to, it didn't matter if you were the president of the organization or a, you know, a kid like me that had just finished grad school and, you know, it was my first real job. The level of accountability that he gave me was insurmountable. And it was almost like a sink or swim type of scenario. So I was at a very, very early in my career. I was given a lot of responsibility, and I was held accountable day by day. And, you know, for me, at least for my personality type, I think that was really helpful for me. I needed that. I needed that level of accountability. I needed somebody who was on me every single day to make sure that I was accomplishing the tasks. And it fell on nobody else but me. So I think accountability and leading by example, I think are extremely important. And, you know, when you're accountable, you have no choice. You have to take ownership of your responsibilities. And, as you move up in the ladder within any organization, when you're held accountable early on, then you can then offer the same basic accountability to your subordinates or the employees that report to you, your direct reports. And it just helps build much better teams. So I think it's super important. You have to take ownership. You have to hold yourself accountable. If you can hold yourself accountable for your actions, then there's no better way than to lead by example by doing that, right? You show your peers and you show your direct reports that, you're holding yourself accountable as well as them for their roles and responsibilities.
Does anyone else want to follow up on that? Taking ownership when leading people within your respective organization, how important is that?
Yeah, I'll speak on it a little bit. I completely agree with everything Miguel was saying, especially in terms of leading by example. That's huge for me. And I feel like taking ownership when your employees or the people under you see that you're taking ownership, they're more likely to take ownership, and they're more likely to have respect for you, knowing that you take pride in the work that you're doing. So I feel like that's really important. And, it doesn't have to be just when you're doing good things. It's when you make a mistake and being able to own up to that and being able to cultivate that really comfortable environment for your employees to see that, oh, hey, this person made a mistake and, it was fine. They moved on, they fixed it, they were accountable. And I think that cultivates a really good environment for people to work for.
Allie, that's actually, go ahead, Allison.
Oh, no, I was going to add to that. Go ahead, Rosa.
No, I was going to piggyback to the next question, but I think hearing from you would be important first.
Yeah, no, I think with accountability, and I'll just share kind of one of my learning experience that was really formational for me in college. In my high school cross country career, the top 7, those of you who were on the top 7 kind of score as a team, we never had a good team my 4 years of high school. So I was focused on me and how well I could do. It's one of those sports that's truly individual, and then you also have the team piece. And and it was apparent through my coaches that I cared more about my performance than ever the team. In my senior year, I didn't get chosen as captain for that reason. And it stung because you wanted that for your applications for college. So when I went to college, I remember my coach talking about having conversations with my high school coach, and that kind of arrogance rang through. And it was humbling to hear that. But I think what I learned and eventually, ended up serving as captain of my college team was you are only as strong as your weakest player, and especially it's so true in track and cross country as well. And so learning to work as a team, we're learning how we could work together in a sport that I always saw as so individual, just on my youth and my experience there. And I think that has rang through. So one of the things was, as a team, we were selected as academic All-American, which meant we really had to lift each other up in ability as well as in the academics. And that kind of, ties to what Miguel said and Allie said about accountability, because in the workforce, there are people who are not pulling their weight as much and not doing as much as they need to be. And so as a leader, it's your job to hold them accountable. And that's not easy to do. Oftentimes it's very easy to either pick up the slack for them, to look the other way, or to give that work to your higher performers. And so I think one of the things that I have learned is, and I think so much with athletics goes to courage, but courage is sometimes working with, having those conversations, having those difficult conversations, holding people accountable, because at the end you're making them better. And then at the end of the day, just like in athletics, in the workplace, making your team better.
No, that actually leads brilliantly when you were talking about some of the accolades that you received as a student athlete. Our next question is from Caroline Kelly. She's from our women's lacrosse program, has a question for Allie about that exact subject. So go ahead, Caroline.
Did your collegiate athletic accolades influence your confidence as a leader going into the workforce? How did your experience with Coach Dorman shape your approach to prideful ownership?
That's a good question. I think for me, when I was in high school, I didn't really play on my high school team, and that kind of put my confidence in the water a little bit. I had verbally committed to a D1 school, and then that fell through, and I kind of was in this place where I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do for college. I wanted to play softball, and, you know, I was just kind of, my confidence was just shot. So when I got to college, I called up Fred, and he was really excited to have me on the team, which was awesome. And, you know, being able to start as a freshman and being able to play almost exclusively every single game, and, you know, winning awards. I was probably too obsessed with my stats at the time. But I think having that kind of, like, seeing all those stats and seeing your hard work pay off kind of helps build your confidence and helps build, you know, okay, like, yeah, I had a bad day, but, you know, look, I'm still leading the MAC conference in stolen bases. And that was, you know, my thing then. And so now I feel like I want those accolades. You know, I miss the competition of college so much. And I think probably, I guess it's because I'm not very far removed yet. But in the workplace for me, you know, hearing positive feedback from my bosses and hearing positive feedback from the people under me, you know, really helps my confidence. And that kind of gives me the feedback that, like, my stats and my accolades gave me when I was an athlete. And playing for Coach Dorman or Fred really shaped my approach to prideful ownership, because he was so easy to talk to, and not just as a coach, but just as a person. He wanted to see me succeed as an athlete, as a person, as a daughter, as a girlfriend for somebody. Like, he really showed me what it was like to have a leader that cared so much about you as a person, like your whole self. And that's really the kind of leader I strive to be with my employees and the people around me as well.
Absolutely. Tim or Miguel, you have anything on this? I know both of you received many accolades during your time at Widener.
Well, I'll go in a slightly different direction. My accolades were more from high school than they were from college, because my sophomore football season, I think it was the third week of the regular season, I'm hitting a sled. My face mask got stuck on it, and I pulled off, yanked. And the next morning, I lost feeling in my fingers and toes. So I went to see our trainer, AJ, and he said, you should go get an x-ray. I went home, got an x-ray, and they discovered that I had congenital stenosis of the cervical spine. And it was at that moment where my world came crumbling down, because the doctor said, hey, it's your choice if you want to play, but I want to let you know that the chances of you becoming paralyzed are much greater than a person with a neck that's normal. And yours is gradually closing in further and further. So you're going to be in a lot of pain as you get older. And I remember going to practice that next day, and all of my teammates rallied around me, came to me and said, we want you to still be part of us. We know you can't play. It'd be foolish for you to play, many of them said. Some of my closest friends. And at that moment, Coach Cupid came to me and said, hey, I'm going to make you a student assistant coach, and you're going to help with the defense. And Coach Juan grabbed me by the arm and said, here, we're in our meeting room right now. Come on in. And it was at that moment that I realized that with an injury, there were still people I could depend on. These were still people who, yeah, they recruited me. Yeah, I played, but then I got injured. And sometimes some coaches, some teams would just wash their hands of you. They took prideful ownership of me as a person and kept me connected to the organization and to the program.
Awesome. Awesome. So our next question, Miguel, you can have a shot, or do you want to follow that up? Go ahead, Miguel.
I was just going to add one quick line. I think for that question, which is a great question. Yeah, I would say the accolades that I achieved at Widener absolutely helped my confidence. You know, I remember being a sophomore and junior year in college, and I didn't think I could be a conference champion, and I didn't think I could be All-American. I had plenty of confidence, but I wasn't that confident. I would have been overconfident if I thought that at the time. But I'll tell you what, Coach Tui believed I could, and he told me I could. He knew I could become a conference champion, and he knew I could become an All-American, and he was prepared to put the time into helping me and helping me develop as an athlete and as a sprinter. And sure enough, I was able to achieve that. And that was all because he believed in me more than I believed in myself. So leaving college with those accolades absolutely helped me and gave me the confidence going into my career to know that I could absolutely be an effective leader and be successful.
Fantastic. So next up, we have Kate Puglisi. She's a member of our women's golf program, and she has a question for the group. And I guess, Allison, you can start with this one. Go ahead, Kate.
What are some unique challenges that you have experienced in your current leadership role, and what do you do to overcome them? And did Prideful Ownership take a part in overcoming them?
Sure, that's a great question. So we can point to right now something we're all experiencing, an incredible amount of uncertainty. And in my role at the university, you know, I work with our employees in HR and then also students from the Title IX side. And, you know, there's anxiety, as I'm sure you're all feeling as students, as most employees are, as I am, quite frankly. And so I think from the athletic experience, I think that we've all kind of been in roles where we've been challenged and things have felt uncertain, and it can be exhausting, and the mental game comes into play. And I think that everybody's experiencing it. I can't say there's so many times I've worked with people where even with my team that I'm leading now, which is a small team, there's only 10 of us, but every call is finding out how people are doing, what they need. And so it's a reminder to me to ask. And I always think of, there's a show, New Amsterdam, that I watch with my daughter, and the doctor who leads the hospital always says, how can I help? So I think asking people kind of how can you help? And then kind of coupling it too, we're all talking about our accomplishments when we were student athletes. Having that piece, you know, I think you'll hear a lot, if you haven't already, the term work-life balance. And in full transparency, I don't know that I've figured it out yet. As you saw Batgirl, my kindergartner, come up and creep into the screen earlier. For me, it's being able to jump out for a run. Sometimes I do my best thinking. You know, we're thinking through a lot of different strategies, a lot of things to help realize how we can best support team members through this. So I tend, when I go out on a run now, more for leisure. Sometimes I still get competitive with myself. But, you know, jogging and talking myself through things. How can I work with a certain team member? I'm sure my neighbors think I'm crazy when they see me talking to myself, but for me, it's kind of been a way. So the sport has kind of helped me balance, and that's where my balance has been. And then with the uncertainty, and using the example of right now, seeing how I can best support the members of the team with whom I work. And then the running on my own is kind of how I take care of myself through that.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Great comments, Allison. I couldn't agree with you more. I would argue we're probably experiencing the most unique challenge of our careers, and likely in our lifetime, right this very moment. It's very difficult for companies, and a lot of companies are not going to make it. Unfortunately, we're not going to survive. You know, the way I'm dealing with it is, you know, I'm fortunate in the sense that I'm in oil and gas, right? So being in the petroleum industry, it's a very cyclical industry. Most industries are cyclical, but oil and gas takes it to another level. It is truly a boom or bust type of industry. You know, when it's booming, it's really good. And when it's bust, it's really, really bad. So I'm fortunate that this is now my third. This will likely be the worst out of all 3 cycles that I've been through. But what it's forcing me to do, it's forcing me to reflect on the last 2, and how, you know, what some of the challenges that we face, and each one was unique in their own way. They're not all the same, but how did I deal with the last downturns, and how do we deal with them as an organization? And then trying to apply some of those lessons learned, this time around. Little things like, you know, just trying to send the team, you know, some inspirational things. You know, one thing I read recently that I found really interesting is, so the last recession, the last Great Recession, was in 2008, 2009. And if you look up, just Google the number of companies that were either started shortly before that downturn or literally in the middle of that downturn. And I'll just give you a few, which I think are going to resonate. So the first one was started in 2008 was Uber. WhatsApp, Square.com, Slack, which by the way, we use in our organization. It's kind of internal communication system, Venmo, and Groupon. So these companies were all either started shortly before or in the middle of the worst financial crisis of our time, 2008, 2009. And, these companies all went on to be extremely successful, had immensely successful initial public offerings. And this is literally, I sent that to our entire team this morning, just as a reminder that, these types of situations, you always have to try to stay positive, but most importantly, nothing but opportunity. The companies that can weather the storm and survive this thing are going to be uber successful in any industry. Does not matter, because that's typically what happens. So you just have to have stamina, you have to have resilience, and you have to stay positive. And everything I just mentioned, I experienced firsthand as a student athlete at Widener. Stamina, resilience, failure, overcoming, all the hardship, perseverance, all these things that we learned as student athletes and that you guys are learning as student athletes at Widener right now are just going to make you that much stronger, in the next chapter of your life when you start your careers.
Okay. Anyone else want to add to that? Okay. Actually, Miguel, we're going to go right back to you. We have a question from Dylan Caputo. He's a member of our track and field program. And he has a question about, it actually goes into what you were just talking about, transitioning from one program to another. So go ahead, Dylan.
Hi. So during your time at Widener, you had to transition from a team sport in the fall to a more individual-based sport in the spring. Did you have to adapt your leadership style when switching programs? Also, how has being a multi-sport athlete impacted your life, and how do you think you learned, or how did you take what you learned as a student athlete into 10X technology?
Okay. Thanks, Dylan. Great question. That's a lot of questions, by the way. I have a question before I start. Are you related to Nick Caputo? Okay. Had to ask. He's a Widener alum, really successful doctor in New York City right now, who I played football with. So I would argue transitioning from football to track, which is arguably a more individual sport, I would argue against that. Contrary to popular belief, track and field actually is the ultimate team sport. And Allison, you can relate to that. I could have placed first in every single individual event I had, and it would not have scored us enough points to win the conference championship or not have gotten us to nationals. So, track is still a team sport. I would say it's the ultimate team sport because you tend to, the bond that I formed with my track teammates was, I can't even put into words. And similar to football, right? Because you got 11 guys on the field and everybody has an assignment and everybody's got to execute on it. It's very similar to football in that sense, but the goal in track and field was always to win max. And, I think one of the best lessons that I learned in track and field was the amount of time, work, and effort, and the way our training regimen was scheduled, really was designed for us to peak right at MAC conference championships. So what do I mean by that? I mean, indoor track season we started right after football, right? So December, we're training, and the workouts were really designed more for power and strength, like long runs and hills and, things that like really, really beat your body up. So our first indoor, I would argue our first 4 or 5 meets, indoor and even the first couple of meets outdoor, we ran really slow. And not because we were not fast, it was just because the training was so hard and it beat us up so bad that we really we're just powering through. We're just grinding out the workouts, right? So each meet was really more like a training session, But the whole goal was, and Tui was a master at this, is to get us to PR, literally PR on MAC Conference Championship Day, because that's really the only meet that at the end of the day, what mattered, right? Our goal was to win the conference championship. In order to do that, you had to endure essentially 5-6 months of training. And then eventually the workouts got a little bit easier. And, then we started working on speed workouts. But again, the goal was conference championship day, which is really a weekend, right? It's a weekend event. We're training to be really, really fast on that particular weekend. You could apply that to business, right? My company's a startup. This company was started in 2017. We're a really, really young company. We're a small group. And I feel like we're in the indoor track season right now. These first 2.5, 3 years, it's all about getting trials, getting customers to try our product, building successful case studies, and then leveraging that information, leveraging that data, and leveraging those success stories to go win more business. But we're in the indoor track season, right? We're just grinding, and it's tough. It's really hard. We get up every day and we're just feel like you're getting punched in the gut. But again, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we know that we're all working toward, a goal of growing the business and bringing on more customers and getting customers to be repeat customers. And that's when you've got a product that's kind of catching on. So yeah, I would tell you, I think I might've missed the last question, but so you're gonna have to repeat that one. But yeah, transitioning from one sport to the other was really no different. They're both team sports. They're a little bit different, a little bit unique in a sense, but they're both team sports. And the goal was always in track and field, it was always to win the conference. Same for football, right? You need a lot of wins along the way to make it to the conference championships. Tim knows that, but in track and field, it was a little bit unique in that sense. And then remind me the last question.
I believe, go ahead, Dylan.
Was how you took what you learned as a student athlete and applied it to business, but you kind of already answered that.
Okay. Yeah, I did. I feel like I missed one.
Just for the sake of time, what we're going to do is we have one last question, and we're going to open it up for the group. So this last question is going to be for Allie. And then when we answer the group, Allison and Tim, we'll bring you back in. So for our last student athlete question, we have Kyle Dockery from our field hockey program has a question for Allison, and then Allie and Tim will rope you back in. So Allison, this one's for you.
Hi. So my question's for Allison. You were integral in the implementation of the Green Dot program here at Widener University. Green Dot relies on the premise that if everyone does their small part and commits to individual responsibility, the combined effect is a safe campus culture that is intolerant of violence. What parallels are there, Prideful Ownership, and the success of the Green Dot program on our campus?
Sure. Thank you, sister. I know that I often think of us as related, Kyle, because
Miguel, they're not related.
But Kyle's just as charming as I am, so we should be. I think, one of my favorite things about Widener in my first year was seeing Courage Day in action, which was so passive, but having the signs with statements about courage kind of spattered throughout campus. And, I was in the process of doing research on institutional courage, and it's kind of everything that I do has been guided by that, because this whole idea, again, having worked for most of my career in sexual violence, there's sometimes an institutional component of that where there's almost a silencing of people who have experienced violence by the institution itself. I mean, some would point to, we saw it at Penn State, we saw it with the Catholic Church, where there's kind of this institutional betrayal. So with Green Dot, what I love about it is, I talked a little bit about it earlier, but the Prideful Ownership piece, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to step up. It takes a lot of courage as students to put that pressure on students to say, listen, a lot of violence that does happen when it happens at Widener is happening, in social settings or out at parties. And so giving you the tools to be able to step up and to have that courage. And so that's what I think about when you think about everyone playing their small part, it takes a tremendous amount of courage to be present for those type of trainings and to talk through uncomfortable concepts, but then even further to take it to settings outside of campus. And we're not there yet, it's just the beginning, but hearing the feedback, hearing students and student athletes get engaged about it helps me to see that there's an opportunity to overcome a challenge that all campuses have.
Absolutely. So I see that we have a special guest here. Director of Athletics, Jack Schaefer, just jumped on. I believe he has a question for the group. Go ahead, Jack.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see everyone. My question is something actually that Miguel had touched on a little bit, and I'd like you to talk about how the current situation with COVID-19 has changed your leading and how you're leading now within your organizations.
Tim, why don't we start with you? You have a lot going on in this right now.
Yeah. Well, coaches, you both know me well, and anytime there's a new hire, and I think, Ross, this may have happened on check-in day, when I first met you in person, I always say, welcome to the team. It's just something I do when someone's hired to Widener University, because I think we should act as if we're a team all working for the same common good. In a situation like this, it's about getting the team together. It's about rallying the troops. And for those students who work with me know I talk a lot in sport analogies and sports sayings. And then this pass, no pass new rule came out that the provost, and I think it's great and fantastic, but I told a group of students the other day when I was meeting with them from an advising standpoint, we're not going to play not to lose. We still got to play to win the game. And what I mean by that in a situation like this is, okay, if I get a D, I won the game, I can put a pass there, and I got it. We're not playing just, we're not playing to lose, not to lose. We're playing to win. So again, continuing to push for excellence in everyone that I interact with, and having my team do that as well, the people who work in the Office of Student Success. And many of these student athletes are getting these emails from student success ambassadors. That's something that I'm organizing with the help of many others to have these emails sent out once a week to say, hey, we're still here, okay? And what I have to do to get those emails together is talk to my colleagues across campus. What do we need students to know right now? All right, how can we help students right now? And getting the input of everybody, bringing it together in a common place and having it dispersed from individual administrators on campus is so important. So the messaging that's going out, staying positive, but again, in talking through athletics, we're not playing this game not to lose it. We're going to play it to win it, and taking advantage of opportunities that are given to us right now.
I'll jump in. And hey, Jack, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Great question. I mean, obviously, this is something we're all dealing with right now, and it's evolving, and every day is a new day, and we're kind of learning from each other. And for me, my biggest thing is, I touched on it a little bit, I'm trying to stay positive. Morale's down right now for everybody, right? So what can I do as a leader to help that, right? Or help mitigate it? And, obviously I can't turn the economy back on. I can't open up the restaurants. I can't make life go back to normal. But I certainly can be a positive influence on my team. And, I do that by a lot of different ways. So one of the things I mentioned before is I try to find relevant motivational quotes or articles that I find that I read that can help bring people's spirits up, right? Bring our team spirit up. Letting them know how many startups were founded in 2008, 2009 that are, not only survived, but became incredible companies. Last Friday, so I've been trying to do these Zoom meetings. Thank God for technology. We do these Zoom meetings Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because continuity is important, right? Business doesn't stop for us. So the Zoom meetings are helping. But what I did last week was, that was a new idea. I woke up and I'm like, you know what? We're going to do a Zoom happy hour instead of our team meeting. And so I changed the meeting from the morning to Friday morning to Friday afternoon. And I did it a little bit early. So 3:30, I know everybody's Friday. People want to get they're home with their families. Last thing they want to do is spend an hour with their coworkers on a Friday afternoon in this market. So we did a happy hour and it was great. We didn't talk about business. Just, everyone had their beverage of choice, some alcoholic, some non-alcoholic. And, we just had a little social interaction, much needed social interaction. So those are little things like that. And, it's evolving. So every day I'm trying to think of another idea or something new that I could do this week to help keep morale up, help maintain continuity with our business and keep the team positive.
Speaking of keeping the team positive, Miguel, we pulled some strings and we actually got Coach Tui to turn on his camera. And I think Coach Tui wanted to ask something to the group. Go ahead, Vince. Yeah, you got it.
You got to hit your mute.
How you doing, Miguel, and everyone else?
How are you?
It's great to see you.
Can I just tell this group right now how much I love you?
Yeah. Yes, you can.
No idea.
Okay? Hey, I'm lovable. I'm lovable. Okay. Well, what can I say? Hey, this is actually for Allie. I'm concerned about the value that our seniors this year, who will be missing end of year experiences where they have a particular amount of stress that actually adds value to their life going beyond this period of time. I remember when Miguel was a senior, he was struggling through, as he would say, so many meets before he ended up becoming All-America. Actually, it was after he became All-America indoor, and then outdoor, he was under a lot of pressure. And I remember the struggle he was going through. He also had some senior project stuff happening, and there was a lot of stuff going on in his life that eventually did enable him to become highly successful. Our seniors are going to ask us for some direction once we can interact with them a little bit better. Do you have any suggestions as to how we can translate what's happening now into their lives so that they don't feel like they missed out on the gift of having to deal with the pressure and the stress of those final weeks or months of their senior year?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken with girls that I played with and girls that I graduated with, and I can't imagine being a senior under this circumstance, especially my senior year we won MAC champions, so I can't imagine like having that taken away from me. So in trying to be empathetic in that situation, I think it's really important for members of the same team to continue talking to each other, to continue having Zoom quote unquote happy hours, or meetings, or playing games on their phones like together. There's so many things you can do to keep in touch, and I think that that's really important, to keep in touch with your team at this point, because everyone's going through the same thing, especially all the seniors. So for them to be able to share in that experience, and this is very unique, and they're not going to get this time back, so there's nothing I can say that will make everything better, but in 10 years from now, it's going to be like, man, that really sucked, but I overcame it, and I was able to learn how to go about going on these Zoom calls and communicating with people in such a different manner. So I think that, yeah, that they lost their senior year, and that's tough, but having all these different experiences and different learnings that other seniors may not have had, I think is pretty interesting and unique.
Anyone else want to follow up on that?
Coach, one thing that I've been doing that may be helpful to your athletes is I've just been trying to like keep the same routine, you know, keep my workouts, get up in the morning at the same time I got up before, take a shower, like just stick to that routine. I think for my sanity, that's really helpful. And I can imagine for your athletes, you know, have them train like as if they're training for max, even though max or may not happen. You know what I mean? I think even if they did 70% of that, I think that would go a long way, you know, for them mentally, for their own mental sanity and you know, for their spirits.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you.
I was going to add too, I'm quite involved with where I went to college at Catholic, from an alumni standpoint. And I only got involved later, and quite frankly, it's something I wish I did sooner. But one of the things that, since we keep in touch with team members, I mean, this is 25 years removed, I can say the team from where I went, they're planning to run a race together. When they're out, they're planning to run a 10-miler or a 5-miler and making it, and kind of like what Miguel said, still training, giving them something to look forward to it. And also I think it's just been watching people, you know, I just finished my doctorate and was supposed to have graduation as well up in Boston with my family and my kids. And I heard how impressive it was for people to watch. So I know I'm feeling that. So I'm quite empathetic towards that, not going to that, but then working at, okay, how am I going to, I know for me, it's redefining it, and maybe redefining it for you is you're going to go to graduation next year. I think that's a great opportunity that's out there. Or get together with your class, or do something at homecoming. I think there are ways to look at that. And while it's incredibly, you know, shortly after I graduated college, 9/11 happened, and you know, anyone that we knew in the financial industry, there were several people who were lost in New York City, and feeling that as a new graduate was just crushing as new professionals in the field. I think that it has made at least, I look at that, my generation, that new generation in the workforce around there, as incredibly resilient and kinder. And I think kind of some of what comes of this, beyond us all washing our hands a lot more, is, you know, really stepping back and looking at staying in your routine of running. I think people are exercising more now. You know, it gives you that time to slow down and think. And as you go into your career as well, I'm sure there's an incredible amount of emotions. You get to step back and look at, you know, have a lot of time for reflection.
Absolutely. Well, Allison, Miguel, Tim, and Allie, on behalf of Widener Athletic Leadership Initiative, Widener University, and just our athletic department as a whole, really like to thank you for taking your time out of your day to come join us and hopefully shed some light on prideful ownership and how to utilize in the real world. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again here soon.
Thanks, Coach. We appreciate it.
Thank you,
no problem at all. And thank you everybody else for attending. I hope your family and friends all stay safe